Today we have Professor Nalini Rao. She will be speaking for the full hour, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. It has taken a while to invite Professor Nalini Rao. We should have called her a little while ago, but the logistics did not permit. Professor Nalini Rao has completed, she has been in the academia for 30 years now. In 2011, she has completed 30 years formally in the academic environment. So we want to congratulate her and thank her for her contributions. She has 2 PhDs, one from the University of Mysore, and then the second one in UCLA in art history. The one from Mysore was on Ancient History and Archaeology. She teaches Asian art, architecture, Indian history, and modern art. Currently, she is a professor at the Soka University. Prior to that, she was a faculty at USC and University of Hawaii. She reads and writes several languages like Sanskrit, Kannada, Hindi, Marathi, and she's also fluent in Tamil and French. So all in all, some 6 to 7 languages. She has 14 academic publications, including 2 books. They are with me here. One is Sangama. Both of them are related to the Vijayanagara Empire, and I'll keep them in the back so that you can take a look. The first one is Sangama, a confluence of art and culture during the Vijayanagara Empire. The second one is Royal Imagery, Networks of Power during Vijayanagara Empire. Please take a look. And she has organized several conferences, including the ones on Saraswati Sindhu civilization in Loyola Marymount University, as well as another conference in LMU on Sangama, the book topic itself. She also designed a gallery on Indus script in the Sanskrit Vidyapeeth in Tirupati in India. And she studied extensively art in the South Indian mathas, including Bellur Math, Shravan Belagula, etc. So, all in all, she's a highly accomplished individual, and we would like to welcome her. One note is her dad, her father, Dr. S.R. Rao, is a highly accomplished archaeologist, and we want to remember his contributions as well. He's mostly known for his work related to Dwarka, the submerged city of Dwarka, and he was the chief Marian archaeologist who discovered Dwarka.
Thank you for the kind words. The moment I'm introduced as the daughter of S.R. Rao, I have a slok in Sanskrit. Uttama Atmanakhyata Pitrakhyata Chamadhyama. If you're really great because of your father, then actually you're mediocre. If you're great because of your mother, then it's demeaning. And if you're great because of your children, it's the worst kind of fame. So one should be great by one's own achievement. However, thank you for inviting. The topic that Manoj Shinde, she wanted me to talk, was very interesting in its own way. A very broad topic. And so when he did ask me, I was not sure what exactly I would be talking about. Many of us over here know much more than what I do about the temple, the Hindu temple, the symbol of Hinduism. The most characteristic form of Hinduism is the Hindu temple. And the most multifunctional, complex, multidimensional institution that has lived across time and space is the Hindu temple, like the Buddhist stupa. However, it has not received the kind of understanding or spread of its form in the way the Buddhist temple has. the West and studied Indian art here. When I go back to India, I was asked, why did you go to UCLA to study Indian art? Why couldn't you study it here? And when I come here, I said, why do you want to study Indian art? Why don't you study Western art? Well, so how am I going to bridge this way of understanding from an outsider and from an insider? When I'm an outsider to India, I think I'm an insider. When I go there, I think I'm from the West. So there is no hope for us. It looks like that. And that too, we are going to do it from a very specialized field, which is architecture, which is art. Now this art history is a discipline, it's not there in India, was not there in India. It has started, it has begun. People are art historians without going through a formal discipline. It's not that we don't have art historians. They do the same kind of work that anyone else does here. But as in China, it's not introduced in that manner of history or literature as the way it is introduced here. Hence this desire to study art history as a discipline. And so all I wanted to do was to write about art, nothing else. And there was no easy shortcut for it. And so what I'm going to be talking about is these two perspectives, that the Westerners look at art and how is that the right way of looking at Indian art? Because we have been sort of talked with sarcasm about the way we look at Indian art by the Westerners, by our own professors. And is the way the Indians look at art, is that the only way that you should, or should not Indians expand their way of understanding? Hence, I'm going to begin and with something very simple in terms of what is art, what is form, what is architecture, sculpture, and painting as fine arts. That is how it has been classified, and all other arts is crafts and folk arts. Basketry and weaving and textiles and woodwork and metalwork and so on and so forth in the West. But with the coming of modern, Indian art was not recognized as art for a very long time. The last one, this was recognized only about 50 years ago. Okay. And the latest one to be recognized is pre-Columbian art. Because of the coming of modern art, where art is not just beauty, but art is something much more. Okay. So there was a change in the theory of art by numerous Western art historians like Panofsky and others, okay, and Arnold Hauser, who said it's a social history of art. Then Indian art came to be represented as part of the world art heritage, which deserves importance. So we don't teach Western art as such, or Western civ now. We teach it as a world civilization, world art, because of this incorporation of non-Western art. So with the help of these images, we just talk a few words.
Turn the lights down.
Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, this is like one of those things that I have to see too, to see what So,
Yeah, he's trying to do that. We can ask him to do
so the Hindu temple architecture, as we know, is a very compelling form in artistic terms. Okay? Compelling in the sense of this is an institution, okay, that had its own system of ramifications. It had its own extensive vocabulary, okay, in every aspect of architecture and sculpture. Now that differentiation between architecture and sculpture that is there in the West, okay, many times does not apply to India. So whenever I say architecture, I mean sculpture as well. So whether it is in terms of technique, it is in terms of engineering feats, it is in terms of plan and elevation, okay, or whether it is in terms of symbolism, okay, or in terms of sculptural ramifications, ritual, pilgrimage, mantras are the center of all arts. It had this societal function, okay, and it is because of this function in society that Hinduism has survived. It's because of the role of the Hindu temple. I know many of us would not like to think so. Hinduism will survive and has survived despite the Hindu temple. This is not an argument I'm putting forth for a PhD thesis or anything, but the way the profusion of temples has taken place, both in India, in Australia, and in US, it shows the great need for the necessity and the function of the Hindu temple as a cohesive unit, as something which brings people together for a way of collective thinking and which idealizes their aims, okay, and gives them a place for self-realization. Okay. So it is a collective symbol. It's a symbol of the collective thinking of the Hindus.
What temple is it?
Oh, this is the Sanatana Dharma temple in New Delhi. Yes, the new one. Swaminarayan. Swaminarayan temple. Yes, sorry. Akshardham. Now, the temple at the same time has become so important because of the well that has been found. And the Padmanabha temple in Kerala, for instance, and numerous other temples, whether in Orissa or anywhere else. So, there is a great need to understand the function and especially the economic function of the temple and the changes that took place in pre-modern India and modern India to solve the problems of whom the wealth belongs to. Okay? And there are many other problems as well, such as those that is confronted by the Archaeological Survey of India, when conversions of Hindu temples to Islamic mosques takes place, such as the one that we see here in Singapore, where the Rudra Mahalaya was converted to a mosque, and how there was a big uproar and riots by the Hindus and Muslims about what should be done. So I'll talk about this problem, okay, as well, okay, in the end. I'll also be touching upon something, how to expand the Indian way of thinking about the Hindu temple, which is a historical document to understand the people, the institution, and power relations in society, and how to go about doing research. In fact, this is one of the greatest drawbacks of Indian historians or art historians, is that we do not have researchers in the right way to go about doing it. Okay? And this is what I learned when I came to UCLA. I did not learn any facts. I already knew them all when I was from India, much more than what the students knew here. But I learned the methodology of doing research, which opens up a very vast field. And unless there is a vast historiography and infrastructure, what we call, in writing about the arts, in producing books about the art, in the way it should be seen, it's not going to have a stature and a status that is accorded to Western art. So Hindu architecture, as we see, whether it is in the North Indian styles you know from Orissa or Bhubaneswar, and what you see here is from Elephanta, the image of Shiva. Okay? Here, a cave sculpture. This is a sculpture in relief, what we call it as, because when architect sculpture is on the walls of the temple, it's called relief, high relief and low relief. Why? So form is anything. When we say form, how do you look at art and architecture, right? When we go to the West, when we go to see Picasso's exhibition, we all go there without understanding. If you don't understand, you can't appreciate. What Indians are good at is they have understood the iconography of Indian art and architecture, the meaning, the symbolism. What we need to know is why do some things appeal to us and why do some things do not appeal? It has to do with the eye and the visual. And art is nothing but a tangible object, material object. It is a visual language. It's a non-verbal language. So it is different from literature where everything is written. But so there is no such thing as what is right and what is beautiful. So art is beyond beauty. Right? Because art is also not what is realistic. So art is something that is in your mind, capable of being expressed, okay? But at the same time, there is some such thing as good art and bad art. Okay? So when somebody says, oh, it's all art, I like everything, and I don't like anything, it's not true. Right? So it is, and so we are trying to understand art the way it is, not from the way it is not. So Westerners, all the time, especially when it comes to sculpture, have misinterpreted many of the arts that you have. For example, the image of the Buddha that you see there, okay, and the image of David. The reason to show you this, or Bernini's ecstasy, this intensity of emotion, okay, of David trying to kill the evil Goliath, okay, at the same time the Buddha overcoming. Okay. So this cannot be looked upon from the way this is looked upon. Because it flows from a content and a meaning and an aim which is far different from what the experiences of David had in the material world. His experiences are in the inner world. The inner world of understanding one's mind about the world. And hence, the content, the art is a manifestation of the ideals. And so even the iconographical gestures or the iconographical lakshanas, what we call it, is brought from nature. Okay? And so it is idealized. Isn't this idealized is the question. Okay? So why do I like Indian sculpture? Because it's ideal. It does not answer. So if someone from the West were to ask us, why do you like Indian sculpture? Oh, I like it because it's meaningful. That's not the answer. So is Western art meaningful. So is this ecstasy of Saint Teresa when she saw God. There's something much more to it. So if you look at this Roman portrait, I'm just sharing a few examples of Augustus, or this king, who conquered and got a lot of iconographical meaning of his conquest here and how he was descended from Zeus and his son, Cupid, and so on and so forth. So here is a very idealized image of his head too. Whether it is Gandhara head or whether it is all kings, they are all represented. It's beautiful, right? In the sense the nose is straight, the eyes are beautiful. But here, it is idealized. It doesn't look real, but it is not realistic. It does not have clothes. So anything, if you keep on saying negative and negative and negative and negative, that's not what we want to understand. We want to know what is positive in this. The positive thing is, here is it is made in bronze, which is one of the earliest bronzes in the world before the Renaissance. It is supple and its form is very harmonious. So there's balance, harmony, the proportion of the body, and the way it is joined with the hands, and then come to the content of Shiva, who is the master of death, holding the deer in one hand and khadga in the other, okay, while he himself is peaceful and calmful. Right? So form and content have come together, okay, in this way. If I were you and you were to do this bronze image, it would not come out like this. Image is not art. So all visual images do not become art instantaneously. So if you look at the concept of movement in art, of course this is very early, this is 1st century BC, Hellenistic, and while this is our 6th century AD, Chalukyan. In terms of dynamism of movement, okay, with how are we going to talk about this? Nobody knows how to talk about art. In India, if you see any book that you take, oh, here is Nataraja, and he's a dancer. Of course, there's meaning, because of his dance of creation and destruction, his time and eternity, he tramples over ignorance. And yes. But to bring it out with this visual form and a language is what the art critic or the historian is going to tell you. This dynamism of movement within a small background, coming out forcefully as though it's coming out from the inside of nowhere and bursting forth with vitality and energy, radiating, okay? And that, while here is his ferocious eyes, okay? And with a tribhanga. So everything was codified. Yes, it was codified. But that does not mean that it is not artistic. We're not thinking of the codifications of how the artist even today, if you go and see, is going to have diagrams and squares and circles and everything, and then take months together. Some of them take 7 years to produce a work of art. So, so with this concept, with this, and another small thing is we also confuse between style, okay? So, what is the Indian style, right? You know where sculpture is from India, you know where sculpture is from Cambodia, we know where it has come from the Greek or the Egyptian. That is style according to cultural periods. Now, there's individual style too, there's Hussain style and others, okay? But there is also another concept of style, okay, which is Gupta style. Okay? Now, this classical style of sculpture is the one that China, Japan, Southeast Asia, everything wanted to imitate. Okay? And what is this style is a contour of what is called as linear form and modeling, okay, where it is the line and the contour and the model that is holding the entire piece of sculpture. It is not the back. The back is not the one that is important. But what is seen as manifestations, okay, with this ever enveloping concept, okay, of iconographical concept that is embedded with form. Okay. Iconography and form are not separate anymore. So I'm just going to skip quickly so that I can go to. So this has to do with narrative art, that is storytelling. One of the criticisms that we find from the West is they don't tell the stories. They just have one way of storytelling that is comic, where Rama appears again and again and again and again, and that's story comic. While here you have amazing friezes from the West, okay? But you forget that nobody has done a very detailed understanding, okay, of these panels. We also have storytelling as one sequence storytelling, okay, that you see in this. Now, both, whether it was Indian or Egyptian or Greek, all of them had some sort of a shastra, Shilpa Shastra, okay, whether it is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana or whether it is mentioned in the Sukraniti Sara, how to make images. And this has continued from a long time. The codification came around about 6 to 8 centuries AD, both in architecture and sculpture. And every glance or every shape of the eye or shape of the head or shape of the shoulder is related to nature. Okay? So this is where things are flowing from, back to nature. And this sort of very observant eye, the artist had a very observant eye. Who the artist was, nobody knows, of course, that's because they were art kids, okay? And there was a big system of patronage in art. And so, but with this system of codification that came about with Sanskritization, the message of Hinduism could be spread, okay, in different ways. There's a lot of talk in the West about erotic sculpture, and even the Buddha, even Mahameshasuramarthini, even when they are being described in big art conferences, they look at it from the point of either breast or the butt, right? So it is very demeaning to an Indian to hear this, okay? And, oh, where did it come from? Did it come from the Bharata Shastra? Oh, why is it that you're all suddenly Buddha's butt is so big? Okay? But that's not the point, right? Can we do a research on this? So, this way of doing research has led to many scholars like Vaidi to write about Krishna, and because for art, it's unlike scripture, unlike a treatise. You can do a lot more interpretations about art than what you can do about other things, right? Because nowhere is it really codified, this, unless you take a small miniature manuscript where the writing and art are tallying together, you understand it. But even then, you can write. So anything goes for Indian art, we say. Anything, so why are there so many art historians about India? Anything goes. You write anything, no one's there to confront you. No one's there to the right or totally wrong. So we have feminist theories. Every month there's a book on the Indian women, on Indian goddesses, on Kali and that and this. Okay? Should it not be located in the psyche of how the Indian sees it? Right? Should it not be something that is not going to demean that culture? But just like as Hussein, it doesn't matter how this Hussein made his Sita sit on the tail of Hanuman. And then we had a conference on this, and we saw that Indian Americans did not like the idea that Hussein had made such a very noble lady like Sita sit on the tail of Hanuman in this manner. Right? But yes, in the name of artistic freedom, okay, everything does not go because there are limitations and there's a context for everything. And art derived from the context, and the audience plays a very important part. It's not just the artist. This is the wrong understanding of the Indian modern artist, thinking that I'm an artist, I can do everything. Yes, the Westerner is now coming back to that idea that audience, how they look, otherwise make your art and keep it at your home in your own bedroom, you say. Don't show it. Right? So, art is for an audience. There is no art if there is no audience. So, and therefore, this theory of rasa and aesthetics that has come out is one of the greatest contributions because it is the subject, it is the experience of the audience about what you're seeing. So this what you're seeing is theater. It's not stone. One thing you have to understand is, it's not stone anymore. And we go to India and say, oh, this is all stone, this is granite, and this is red sandstone. Yes, technique and stone are important, but stone is totally important. It is a human being. It is a human being with values, with a joy that one is supposed to be living with. And it's like if you don't see a monk who is joyful, you never know what it is to be joyful all your life. So here you're seeing that, the joy that she's experiencing. And you experience the same experiences as you go in the temple, from the outside to the inside. And let us look at Western architecture. This I got from the next one, the Parthenon. Maybe most of you have seen this. One of the greatest temples, but classical temples. Now when we say classical, what does it mean? So, are all Indian temples classical? It does not answer our question, okay, but I'll come to that. says that they form something that people took the idea and used it again and again and again. And even today our White House, our domes and our pediments are all built in the Parthenon manner. Why? Because of the geometric sense of proportion it has of the height and the width. Right? The 17 and 8, that intercolumniation. It's not just geometrical perfection. It is what is called perceptual perfection. Right? You can have a ratio 4:9:8, but there is some such thing when we say when you put a painting here, no, don't change it, put it there. No, when you change this, no, put it here. Why? Because that's how artists and the audience are supposed to look at. He has this intuitive understanding of form, scale, proportion, balance, rhythm, harmony, and visual weight, which is different from real weight. So the moment you look at something, the whole world is an art. The world is a theater. And so the Hindu temple is a recreation. This is higher than the Parthenon. And it is the whole temple in Ellora, which is being chiseled out of a huge rock. And the planning is so systematic, you can go in and out, and even the icon is all rock cut. Such immense planning cannot seen anywhere else in the world. So these are the aspects of uniqueness of our architecture, and the foundation is 7 times that of the Gotra. Right? So it's not going to be affected by those earthquakes. See. Now here, this is a theater, the theater of the world. And as you go in the theater, so its forms, its endless forms in terms of design, sacredness, what we call as design. Design is nothing but a multiplication of the same flower, but those have a sacred meaning, whether it's a bell or whether it's a lotus. And so the whole world is a manifestation of endless creation. Okay? And there are possibilities of endless creation. So why is it we don't have any blank space for the eye to rest? If you go to modern art, when you take modern art museums or modern architecture, there are blank spaces, everything's functional, form follows function. But that is not all in architecture. Right? Architecture is the idealization of all its values that is put together. So every manifestation, and so as you enter the temple, another aspect, since I don't image knowledge, that many of them talk about Indian temples is, oh, it is so easy to understand the Western. You go there, he tells you of all this culture here of Zeus and Athena, their birth, their fighting and this. And so everything is a very programmed way. And now, are you seeing any more programmatic way than what we have in terms of Elephanta? Okay? Both in architecture and sculpture. Here is Elephanta. Hey, you must have gone in there. And here is the east-west axis. And here is the north-south axis, and here's the east-west axis. But the Garbhagriha is not here, it is here on the side. Right? Why is that? Why is the Garbhagriha on the side? Why could the Garbhagriha be here? This is the wall of the whole hill. Right? So here, the architect is so creative, right? Because you need a production of patha or circumambulatory paths to go around. Right? And here in the center is this huge image of Maheshwara, okay, with 3 heads, the feminine, masculine, and himself, Anhata, this balance, this equilibrium in architectural axis. So here you have round, and then the square, and then the axis meets, there is he going to make that. So everything is a very ordered, planned, controlled, measured, in scale and proportion, in architecture and sculpture. What more programmatic do you want when he has placed on every niche the dichotomies that Shiva transforms? Shiva is a dancer, Shiva is a yogi, Shiva is the one who graces, Rama and Kailasa. And the Shiva is Ardhanarishwara, Shiva is Ganga. lot more programmed. So this sort of research is not being done in India. And this is the type of research that we like to encourage. Another uniqueness of the Hindu temple, which one of the great reasons why it's never going to go away, it's there to stay, is because of this, what we call as sacred order of the cosmos. It rests on this Vastu mandala, as you know. And this Vastu mandala, Vastu is the site, Purusha is this Mahapurusha, this great being, okay, who is the principle of all things. While Brahman is just, has no name, no Brahman by himself can't do anything. So it's this Purusha, and mandala is a cosmic order. And the temple rests on this, and the center of the temple, the gopura, is here, put in the center, and below that is this Garbhagriha. So here this cosmic alliance, because here is a ritual diagram of the entire cosmos, with its planetary deities, with its Ashtadipalas, okay? So the whole form, okay, is what is there in either in the Brut Samhita or in the so here is saying, "Oh, I bow to the holy Vastu Purusha of great strength and valor, whose body rests under all dwellings, son of Brahma, upholder of the entire universe, whose head is placed to carry the burden of the earth, who makes all sights, whose presence, towns and cities, temples, houses, tanks, and wells, of gracious appearance, support of the cosmos, supreme Purusha, grant all grace to India, to Indra, Lord of dwellings." If the temple is not built correctly, according to the Vastu Purusha Mandala, with the squares, the 91 and 108 numbers, the numerical cosmology, the town or the city is not going to flourish, and the people are not going to flourish. Right? Because here is where, and with this belief, everything is faith and belief. And so those who are builders and codifiers of this knew the effect of visual culture on the people. Today we have cinema, we have video, we have all this internet, and we know the effect it is producing. So just imagine the effect this had, because every village has a temple. There are 3,000 temples that are officially protected or national monuments by the Archaeological Survey of India. There are 5,000 protected by the state, and much more that are not unprotected, like village temples that the people can collect them. So you can imagine the thousands and thousands and thousands. And so we have to understand it from a different perspective. Now, even in terms of evolution, it might be codified, but before it was codified in the 6th, 8th centuries, then we know about temples from 2nd century BC. There has been evidence. So it really comes out in 4th century AD, in the Gupta period, when you have the Sanchi temple, and there are other temples here in Ayodhya, where the earliest temples were flat-roofed, okay, and then you have come with the shikhara and different forms, and very great elaboration. So since lack of time, I will not go here. So this is going to show the icon as a replica of timber and wood, and both in terms of plan. This is the Virupaksha temple at Patalkar, one of the great centers of experimentation of Indian architecture. And here we see if you have any questions later on, we'll have. So here is the ramification of a stellate plan that is in Hoysala. Now, sometimes when you look at this, especially the younger generation, doesn't know what are we going to make out of this? Why is this like a jewelry box or something like that? It could be. Okay? It is a jewelry box. Every part is chiseled minutely. It's like the Itwa the Dawla, right? What you have in Napa. Okay, that's also a jewelry box. And that is also a continuation of the stone tradition. So India is known for its architectural sculpture. It's not painting. It's the Chinese or Japanese known for painting. We have paintings, but India is not known for paintings. The percentage of paintings to architectural sculpture is way different. So here, how are we supposed? These offsets and projections, offsets and projections. Offset is light and shadow playing on this schist, okay, which is soft rock, okay, in a manner which is not monotonous. It might be designed, but it's not monotonous. Here you go, very horizontally, and then a short wall. Why it is functioning is another question, which I will tell you. Why do they have a roof sloping roof? Is as you go inside, is this elaboration of every part, okay, of the temple. Went on, whether it's in Somnath, Alayabhi, or whether it's inside in Vijayanagar, through the corridors, because these endless manifestations of the God, okay, and God is in the image of man. Right? So this understanding of the relation God and man are not far from each other at all. Okay? They're all in the image of man, like Greek gods. Greeks are the only ones who also clothe their gods, like us. And how many gods are there? As many men are there. So, there is this personalization of your ideals in human form. This is the easiest way to understand one's aims and ideals and what is at the core of your being, the spiritual being. So all this plurality comes from this spiritual understanding of the divine and the human. And the human wanting to be divine. And recognizing, so here when the dancer is there dancing the temple, the center of all arts, he is recreating the story that is there in what we call the so-called mythology. But he is the one who imparts life to this theatrical space. And this theatrical space is the one that is making him dance in this way. It is sacred space, and sacred space both in time and space. So here the sacred space, okay, has reverberations, therefore you have music, and music is the one that gives what is time. To understand time, you have to go to music. Okay? So music and dance and rhythm and mantra are part of architecture and sculpture. One is not dead and one is not living. It's not that music is living and architecture is dead. This is as much a manifestation, okay, of the visual world of reality. So let's so we'll stop here and go to a little different topic. So I thought I would take, once we did a conference on dance and sculpture and architecture, so we go a little entirely different, okay? Before which has to do with just a little bit of the research that we do. This is Vijayanagar, South India. And as you know, Vijayanagar here has 7 walls of fortifications. The capital of the Vijayanagar Empire is Hampi, also called as Vijayanagar, and here you have all the sacred temples, okay, what is Pura, Virupakshipura, Krishnapura, Achitrayapura, Tiruvallurapura, and so on and so forth, while in the center is the royal palace. And what happened is we found many stone sculptures, such as this which you see on the left, okay, during excavations, continuous excavations were going on. So how do you identify them? Okay? So although these Vijayanagar empires were kings were one of the greatest patrons of art and architecture, like the Kushanas and the Guptas, how many images of the kings do we have on our temple architecture and sculpture? None. You have to look and look and look for hours together, and you'll be lucky to find one. How do you even know that he's a king? Is there something written? Is there an inscriptional evidence? So art history uses architecture and sculpture as visual evidences combined with epigraphy, literature, okay, religious texts, without using epigraphy or literature or original text, art does not stand on its own most of the time. Right? So when people say you are art historians, oh, yeah, this is just like looking and going. It's not looking and going at all. This is the last part. Art is the one that changes the least. The first thing that changes, spreads is philosophy and literature, but art is the last to come out, okay, in substantiation. So when we had these sculptures, so having looked at all the sculptures, we tried to identify, and we also found that there were sculptures of kings, of Krishnadeva Raya here in the war battle when we went to war and conquered Orissa, Kalinga. And that is represented. Now why should he be here on top and not where it is visually seen? Right on top. Who's going to look at the top for a king? So what is it? Something in the institution of the temple. Was the temple more powerful or was the king more powerful? Okay? What is this? Is it temple an institution of economic power, political power, or religious power? Okay? So this is what wanted to understand what kingship and power, and found that the only inscription that is there, it says Krishnadeva Raya is the Tirupati temple and his two queens. There are been some images of the Chola king being coronated by Shiva. So there is a tradition of having a few kings here and there. Okay? But this is one of the identifications of king. And here we find a Chitraya giving dana, a gift, to the Brahman. Now why should gift giving appear on the temple? Right? Nowhere else, we don't see this in this very unique understanding. And we also have this Tulabhara where the king used to weigh himself, the Mughal kings weigh themselves and so forth. So this tradition of gift giving became what we call why gift giving is so important. And it's not that I'm really asking you to give to a child, but it is extremely important to give. Okay? All the temples relied on gifting to the temple. Okay? And gift giving by nobles, by kings, they were given land grants and they were given a lot of money, so they were rich. Moreover, it all began when the temples in early medieval period were ritual centers where they had to clothe the god, they had to give food, they had a lot of rice and camphor and gold and flowers and all. So it became a center for the market to grow, and from the market and industries grew, became trade centers, and even the roads, if you see in Madurai, go in a sort of a square manner where the ratha, or the chariot or the procession can be pulled, okay, for the temple to go out and inspect the city. So it is the temple that owned the city. It is the temple that guarded the city. And it gave a lot of economic employment, economic development. The kings gave large mahadanas, as we call, and their land grants, they leased the land, they cultivated, they helped them to cultivate, and it was some sort of an economic distribution from the rich to the poor. So this was a very massive urbanization, temple urbanization as it's called, urbanization through the temple. So it even collected taxes, it built roads like the temple does today, it owned all these things. So this important economic and political role, so that means, wasn't it dependent on the king at that time? The king, yes, it had ties to the king as well. The king could give grants to the land. So here was a balance, an interdependent relation between the king and political power and economic power as well as the bazaar. So you see, these temples have a huge bazaar street where even diamonds and rubies and gold are sold, as foreign accounts by Domingo Pays and of the bazaar have said, and the temple was the one that it was possible for the bazaar to continue to function because of the temple. And it is the king who only gives security. called a nagara when it comes under royal obligation of collecting taxes. You have Pura, you have Uru, you have Pattana. And so this whole Vijayanagar was known as Vijay Virupaksha Pura. Then it became a Pattana, then it became a Nagara. So if you look at all the development of temple as an institution in relation to economic and political power, it has gone through changes from the Pallava period to the Chola, to the 16th century, then to the Mysore kings. Okay? So similarly, if you understand these changes that happened in the colonial period and post-colonial period, then it's possible to solve some of the understanding of how the temple owns the gold and all the rituals and what to be done with it and so on. So I won't go into detail, read the question.
Yes, continue.
Yes, okay. So another aspect, this is a little aspect that I also did was, as you know, many of you must have been to Vijayanagar or Hampi. It's a huge area, okay, a lot of excavations are done. Here is a monument which is known as the throne platform. The king used to sit and do the Dasara celebrations. And there have not been accounts of how the Dasara took place. So there are lots and lots of reliefs that you see here. Okay? And so the question is, what does it imply? Why did the Vijayanagar kings perform Dasara? So did the Mysore kings. And the difference between Mysore to Vijayanagar is just 60 years. Okay, when Vijayanagar died, Mysore kings are. And what do these reliefs mean? Are they related to anything? Why was it so important to do a procession during the Dasara when you have the it's a 9-day festival to the goddess, Navratri? And why did the king go out in procession? What did he do? So this all began during the Vijayanagar period. There were the processions of the king going out during Pahari on the 9th day. Began. Now, why did the Vijayanagar kings begin this firstly? Okay. Every time they used to go out in October for big Vijaya earlier, but then due to other changes in political circumstances and founding kingdom and all that, they could not. So it was just a ritual. Every time he entered the gates, there was a Vijayotsava, a commemoration, and he would give gifts. So, at last, they combined the Mahanavami festival, the Navaratri, with the Rama, and then they built in the center of the city, they built the Rama temple right here. And he would go out in procession here to the different people would enter the Rama temple from different sides. He would enter the Rama temple from here because he thought he was the Dharmaraja. Right? So this understanding of the relation between the king, Rama, and the king was not very powerful in his own way. There are a lot of limitations. Okay? And this ritual enactment of the king's procession, okay, around the city, which has been recorded and which still continues to function in the Mysore Dasara procession, is what I looked at. Okay? And how it was nothing but a reenactment of the coronation of the king. So hence we have hundreds of coronation ceremonies of Rama all over the temples. Wherever there is a Ramana, there is a coronation ceremony. Whether in Southeast Asia or Cambodia, wherever you go. Right? Coronation. Why did the coronation become so important? Right? What happens of infusion of political power? What happens to? So this is what I looked at and analyzed that how you go to the Rama temple and look at the reliefs. So the king appears actually 31 times or something on these reliefs, seated here. And so the description given by the Portuguese travelers and the description found in present Mysore processions was tallied. How he witnesses Portuguese, how he witnesses a wrestling match, why is a wrestling match so important, what does he do every day of the 10-day festival, okay, and what happened in Vijayanagar. So there are lots of things. And how the whole thing, and why giving Darbar on the throne platform became so important. And Darbar, as you know, even in Mughal times became to be so important. So how this is a continuation of this tradition, but in a changed form. So this is what I looked at. The last one, which is what is a about the Singapore temple. As you know, in Aurangabad, the Rudra Mahalaya temple was a huge temple, and it was built in the 12th century AD. And of course, it was conquered and destroyed by Ahmad Shah. And he built his mosques. You can see the remnants of the mosque here. In the mosque, the prayers were continuing. Even as early as 1959, when the government takes over 1947, anything that you do, puja or prayers, should be maintained as it is. So there were no prayers in the Hindu temple, and this was maintained as prayers where the Muslims would go and pray. But what happened is they kept complaining that the mosque is in ruins and the compound wall is falling. So in the 1959 report said, yes, you've got to repair this, you've got to abolish all these structures that block the view of a temple. That is normally what conservation is done. Many times it takes 10 to 20 years for the archaeological survey to ask the people not to tie cows in the temple. And please move and don't put the cow dung on the temple. But because they refused to move, and despite compensation. So it was all done, and ultimately in 1980 it was agreed that it would be, okay, we're going to take repairs to your mosque, but on the compound wall. And so they started digging. Once they started digging, they said, oh, why are you digging? Without digging, I can't repair your wall. You have to have the foundation. So when they dug, they found a lot of things here, okay, that came to light. A huge garbhagriha with a linga, okay, hundreds of sculptures, and even for the first time, royal sculptures in the garbhagriha, which is never there, which are never found in any of the temples in India. So these are documents of history, right? And one thing we have to understand, it's not a question of just Hindu or Muslim, but anything that leads to disclosure of ancient documents needs to be disclosed, okay? And such amazing sculptures. Have you ever seen a door jar with a mother and a child like that? Ever found it? Like, except in painting, we don't find it anywhere else. So these are the temples that are found. Royal sculptures in the Garbhagriha. Now the Garbhagriha is always a place where there is no form here. And of course, so the Hindus said that he's going to start praying. And the Muslims gave a big row, and then they said, oh, you want to take over the mosque? Then there were riots, 72 people were injured. They went to court, and the minorities commission was brought, and so on and so forth. So it took years and years and years. And of course, this, as usual, the images go to the museum, which is one of the sad things. Another big problem that we are having is images go to the museum, like, you know, Indians are writing, asking some of the images, right? For example, the Saraswati image that they're asking back. The Greece has received so many images for the Parthenon from England, hundreds, and they've built a huge museum, and they're putting back every piece of sculpture that might be like that. Even to put a few images of a broken Narsimha, we are afraid to do that. Although the artist says, I know where the hand goes, I know where it goes, we don't do that because of the big policy that we don't recreate anything, right? We don't restore anything. That's good. But asking other museums to give back, especially the sculptures that matter spiritually or religiously, is good. Now, one of the biggest contentions of the museum, which is true, is India does not know how to maintain its sculpture. It drills its sculpture with iron, and it rots inside, it rusts inside. I'd rather have it in an American museum or a European museum where it is safe. So much of most beautiful sculptures that India has is in the Western museums. Half of Indian art is in Southeast Asia too. But it is time that it does strongly give the reasons, okay, and what it matters to the people to get, at least start getting some of the sculptures back. Okay, those that matter in a place, because it is not meant to be in a museum. Okay? It is not a private art, it's a public art. And all artists are anonymous. It is meant for the people to view things publicly and understand it and experience it publicly. So, so with these types of problems that come out, okay, so one has to understand this context, like what happened for Ayodhya, right, when the whole temple was taken out. Even the plinth was taken out, so archaeologists could not even see whether it's a 12th century or 13th century monument. If at least we had not taken out the plinth of the temple, we know how exactly it looked like. Right? So, I mean, at another time, we have problems of conservation. They're huge, a pillar has fallen, a crane cannot go in. Okay? You cannot use modern methods of concrete and cement to fix that. It has to be in the ancient method. Okay, that it has to be fixed. There's huge beams in Puri Jagannath temple, it's falling. So these are huge structural problems of architecture. Now it's a Konark that is coming out. Right? So these are huge problems that needs to tackle. Okay? And so for this, it is important that the understanding of the role of the temples. Right? Every time somebody writes about India or Shiva or Krishna, they're writing its mythology. Okay. While every time we read about the Ulysses or the Iliad and the Odyssey and what they said in scripture and how it is shown in art, we think there's something so great to learn from those Greek 5th century BC sculptures and literature, while there's nothing much to learn from Indian. Okay. So this sort of understanding and saying that everything is mythology, okay, but it has to be brought up and understood from the concept that the Westerner is looking at. It is history, it's historical knowledge. From religion, yes, it is religion too, but now religion is a corrected term. Right? So, religion and spirituality, if you brought out to historical understanding is also religious understanding. You have to understand this because history places it in its own contemporary context, with 5th century or 8th century, how the people were thinking, how they were living, okay, what they were writing. And Hindu temple architecture and sculpture are religious sculptures, but they're also documents of history. So, with these words, I thought I would just end on it.
Temples like pyramids are built in triangular fashion. Is there some significance to it? I understand there is similarity of our architecture plus the way our names are Indian here on this continent compared to too.
No, firstly, it resembles Mount Meru, which is secondly, it has height and visibility from distance. In terms of structural elements, right, because it is built with no masonry, it is built by sheer weight of pressed stone, right, one on top of the other. Right? And so it's a beam and lintel system. It is not an arch system. It might have arches, but there's a pseudo arch, we call it that. The weight of the whole huge shikara is just falling one on top of the other. Right? And they do it with holding ropes, and even still if you see the traditional temples are built out in place.
Can we infer from the similarity of the structure that there is function in ancient times?
See, the Egyptians also built pyramids, for instance. And we don't have, without any evidence, we cannot say there is a connection. Right? So whatever India got, like the Indian temple, the Greek temple, right? There's this roots of Indian culture, they say. 4th century AD or 3rd century AD, they're very hard temples. The Greek temples go back to 5th century BC, right? 4th century BC, it's already there. So, because of the influence of Gandhara and others, so temple form also came. So we have similarity of cushion capitals, a similarity of pillars, we have similarity of the eye and the nave. Right? We have similarity, we have a garbhagriha, they have an altar. Right? If you compare, yes, but India Indianizes those forms. There might have been. Now the theory is, the latest books are coming out, which looks at the philosophy of Plato and that of India. Plato got his So now the hot topic is about which is older. India. India is the only country in civilization culture that can stand up with this law. The rest is given to
Please use the microphone.
yeah. Yeah, so this is a very hot topic today, and lots of philosophers, literary people are all coming to me and saying, is this true? So, hence, whether it's the Sindhu Saraswati civilization or the Indus civilization, with its earliest language system in the world of Sanskrit, and then later on to its temple architecture, or its that. But without evidence, a historian cannot concretely say it came from there or it came from here. And according to the West, documents, are written documents. But there are oral documents, oral traditions and documents, right? So we use oral traditions as well when we do our research. But depends on what you're doing your research in. Trying to prove that it came from there is not the aim. It might have, and there's, a lot of Greek rituals came, Greek migrations took place, Jews came, they settled, and the caste system became, Greeks came, they became part of the whole caste system. There's been a lot of writing on this. But whether the meaning, like even the Ashoka's pillar, capital, and Persepolis, there's a lot of relation, and they said it came from Persepolis to Ashoka. But if you look at pre-Ashokan pillars and stone, India already knew how to do those stones, knew the lintels, knew an amazing way of chiseling the stone, and earlier it was already interpreted as inverted bell capital. We say it was a lotus capital, right? So it is important to go to the nearest place where ideas are obtained instead of going so far to Persepolis and say he borrowed it. But art does travel. If you see something and come back, you might imitate it or might think about it. It travels very fast.
When they discovered the Pahari Masjid, what kind of architecture they found it? I think they don't come out yet, but what kind of temple they found?
Oh, see, everything was in crumbles. They had to literally go and look at all the debris. It was just thrown out like that. They found a 12th century temple. So the image, the kind of designs and the style of the designs, you can place where it's coming. So any stone, any piece of silverware or whatever you're giving, any piece of sculpture, you can say approximately what period this could be, what style this is, okay, and so on and so forth. It's possible to say.
They also, what dynasty was that? 12th century in Ayodhya.
12th century.
No, what dynasty, which kings were there at that time?
Even that 12th century temple was a renovated temple. There was a temple before, and it goes back several ages past.
But you don't have the several ages past, you should have a foundation. You should have a stone foundation, brick foundation. But if they've taken out the entire plinth.
See, they are allowed to research completely, perhaps. Like for instance, your father,
He did go
he
there.
did the marine architecture in Dwarka. That was stopped abruptly, I understand.
No. That was because he...
Could you please use the microphone? We are recording.
No, well, it is a different case. Each is a different case by itself. Ayodhya, my father did go along with Srivastava to look at the rupa. They were caught. So they went for days and days and they dug and they saw everything and they said 12th century temple, but we do not know how the earlier temple was because that everything was taken off. They could not find any bricks, they could not find anything. Could have been, could not have been. If you probably allow them to take up archaeologists, which will take time, but it's going to rake up this issue again.
Perhaps, like you said, we have to coordinate with what scripture said, whatever scripture.
They always do.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything is coordinated with scriptures. They take pains to read every scripture even before digging. They go take pains to ask every old man in every village, did you find this? Did you find that? Did you find where to dig? Is the big question. The biggest question is, you can't just dig. Are you going to find things wherever you get Somebody says go and get the equipment from America and it will tell you the sound system. But we have so layers and layers and layers of civilization. It will give you an inkling of what was there in the 18th century, 17th century. We are very perfect in all this history, 17, 16, 15, 14. What we want is early and it's not going to show up. So,
Is there a fundamental difference between North Indian temples and the South Indian? To me, it looks like I see it. They look different.
yes, definitely. It is about for the shikhara or the tower, what we say. The North Indian is curvilinear and the South Indian is more horizontal. Okay, so if we go into the details of this, right? Whether you have the shala and the kuta and the horizontal and this sort of amla and all that in the North Indian. It is only when it comes to that area beyond the shikhara. The lower part becomes divided into mandapas, Ardha Mandapa, Antarala, and mandapas and Natya Mandapa and so on and so forth. Right? But for example, Belur temple, Hadaipet Belur, had a curvilinear shikhara. Both were evolved in Aihole. We have evidence there where you have both north and south as well as the Vaisara style. Vaisara is a mixed combination of the two. So if you go to Aihole, at every step, that was my first thesis in India, at every step there is a temple where they are in the form of a stupa, they are in the form of a four-pillared, there's a kakshasana, there is no kakshasana, then there is the architrave, then there's no architrave. So you can see the development of architecture. And then it's codification as to why a temple should be this way. So there is a fundamental,
Is that difference just because the tradition, like north they started some tradition and south there was another tradition, or is it something different?
see, there are some curvilinear shikharas in south, but on the whole, North India has more curvilinear shikharas. But if you go to certain areas like Patadkal and Pallava, okay, like Ellora has a South Indian shikhara, right? Because it's geographically more or less it was divided like that. Because the south was the one, and also in the north, most of the temples is destroyed. Major temples are destroyed there, right? We have very few temples there. And the south did maintain the horizontal structure. But there were kings who patronized this light-looking curvilinear shikhara. Even in late Chalukyan temples we have that. We can find a few. Because all this was the guild system. If you look at the guild system and the artists and how they traveled, artists were called from far. Guilds like the Ayavali guild system was very powerful. It went from one emperor to another, they were called. So sometimes they would carry their traditions there and the emperor would want them to build that way and they did it. Right? So there is a great expert.